What's up, guys? UFC 231 just wrapped up and very solid card. The main event was special in many ways. The co-main event, as well as most fights on the card, went the same way as most people thought it would, or at least I did. And when you talk about a will of a fighter and the heart to just keep going on, never give up, and the chin to just take punishment, with that definition, you will see Brian Ortega's face next to it. In a way, it's good, and in a way, it's not. Of course, you want to show your toughness, but if you have it, it's a great thing to fall back on, and Brian Ortega showed toughness that's on legendary status. I mean, he took over 200 clean shots to the head and never looked like he was rocked. Like maybe stunned a few times here and there, but never looked like he was complete out of it or ready to go away. He was in that fight for the most part. I mean, the fourth round was a one-sided beating for Max Holloway, but for the most part, he was in the fight trying to land shots, trying to defend his shots the best way he's used to doing. And the third round, he was landing shots on Holloway after taking somewhat of a beating in the first two. Now, we have to all commend him on the toughness and the heart he brings, but man, for a young fighter to showcase that much of his toughness is not a good thing for the future of his career. I mean, that was a lot of damage, and I hope the future, his career, is all intact. This doesn't deter him in any way and doesn't discourage him in any way. I hope he comes back better than ever from this. But there's been a lot of young fighters, we've seen many of them that are never the same after beatings like that or even getting knocked out or something. Sometimes this is worse than getting knocked out because you're mostly outclassed, and Holloway's the kind of guy who doesn't really knock you out cold. He makes you suffer in there, almost like a Diaz brother, with the sheer volume of their strikes, and they just never get off and they never get tired. And with Holloway, like I always say, it's a snowball effect with him. If you allow him to keep going, it eventually turns into an avalanche and it's just too late. That's what you saw in the fourth round. I mean, it kept building and building. In the third round, Ortega was disrupting that momentum a little bit. Then in the mid, toward the end of the round, Holloway built that up quickly again in the fourth round. It just took over, and you saw one of the most one-sided rounds in UFC history. And it was a great decision for the doctors to stop this fight. I mean, Ortega was battered, to put it mildly. I mean, he looked pretty bad out there. He looked really damaged. If I was his corner, I would have stopped it because you have to save Ortega. He's not going to give up. After seeing half of what he was going through in that fight, you knew this guy was not going to give up no matter what happened. So the corner, I think, should save him. Save him from being a warrior out there to the point where he just diminishes his career further on. So fourth round TKO due to corner stoppage, doctor stoppage. The fifth round would have probably looked pretty ugly. I mean, if he wasn't getting knocked down, I don't know if he was going to get knocked down in the fifth round, but it would have gotten really bad. And Ortega's defense was a big opening that a lot of people are pointing to. Not keeping his hands up. I mean, Holloway landed 307 strikes in the fight and landed 59% thrown. So landed 307 out of 507. That is staggering. I wonder if he broke the record. Because if he didn't, he's right there. And he did it against a guy like Ortega. Now, Ortega doesn't have the best defense. Let's be honest, this really showcased that. That really exposed his striking defensive game. But he's always been hit, right? Against Cub Swanson, against Renato Moicano really put it on him. Similar to this, but not to this extent, but it was a lesser version of this. Ortega striking defense really needs improvement. I mean, he doesn't use his hands, really. Doesn't parry a whole lot. Doesn't block shots. He'll try to roll with punches, lean away, pull in punches, and duck under them. But when you have a guy like Max Holloway doesn't overextend and sets up combinations and has quick hands at that and very good at trapping opponents, if you trap someone who's leaning all over the place, they have nowhere to move. And someone like Ortega who doesn't use his hands, doesn't block, their chin is the only thing in the way. He was taking shots, sometimes just running into them, not moving his head. And there'll be times where he would try to lean away, trunk movement, bob and weave on the punches. But Holloway never extends to get countered by something crazy, especially some of those hooks that Ortega was trying to counter him with. And Ortega was switching stances a lot, which was throwing off Holloway in the third round especially. In the first two, it wasn't really. But I think after the beating Ortega was taking, Holloway was probably thinking for a second, what do I have to do here? And he wasn't catching on to the switching of the stances of Ortega, which got him caught in the third round a couple times. But then he readjusted back into the game, got focused, and started landing his shots a lot more and not getting hit by those counter shots. And Ortega, whenever Holloway was throwing a jab on him, Ortega would pull back on it, And then Holloway would usually follow that up with another jab or sometimes a straight right, but very quick straight right. And then he would lean to his right and overextend himself completely. And now after that second jab of Holloway, the right hand finds its target because Ortega just got himself stuck in this situation, got himself stuck in that position. He has nowhere else to go. He can't move his feet. It's going to be way too slow to get away from a punch. And that was landing a lot. That same sequence happened many times in the fight. And Holloway he was just so sharp. He just showed such a high level of striking in that fight. It's hard to say anybody beats him, in this division especially. Not only did he land over 200 strikes and a pretty high percentage, he wasn't really getting hit much in the fight if you actually look back at it. I know the commentators are making it seem like Holloway was getting tagged, especially because Ortega lost the first 2 rounds. He was getting hit a lot. And then he started landing a couple shots, and commentators were getting pretty excited about it, but then there were shots that were not landing, getting rolled off the shoulders, and it just made it seem like Holloway was in more trouble than he actually was. At the end of the 3rd round, I mean, he was making Ortega miss a lot in the pocket, too. In the pocket, of all places. And Ortega tried to go for some takedowns here and there. He got some, but he couldn't hold down Holloway. Holloway's takedown defense and getting off on the bottom is among the best in the UFC. He actually tried to go for a guillotine on Ortega, and for a second I thought it was getting close, but he just didn't have the control of the body, so he let go of it. Didn't want to waste energy too much, but that was getting crazy. Imagine him submitting Ortega, and Ortega went for a leg lock. He tried to pull guard for a second there. I think he should have tried pull guard because nothing was working on the feet. I mean, getting it to the ground where he would have an advantage, it just seemed like he didn't commit to it fully. So it was an excellent win for Max Holloway, and he just showcased he's one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. He's on a path to be the greatest featherweight of all time. I know people are starting to claim that. I think it's still a little bit too early. I think he still has to do a little bit more title defenses, longer reign as champion. His competition, though, is no joke. You can even say it surpasses Aldo because he did beat Aldo twice, and now he beat Ortega. If he fights Chad Mendes, Frankie Edgar, guys like that, this will way further his claim to be the best featherweight of all time. But you can make somewhat of an argument right now that he is, but I still think it's a little bit too early. People really underrate the run that Jose Aldo was on, especially to this day. And Holloway has said it himself before. You know, Aldo has the numbers, and he still has to prove himself to surpass those numbers. But who should these guys fight next? I mean, Brian Ortega definitely needs some time off. If Jose Aldo beats Cub Swanson, I think that's the fight to make. Aldo versus Brian Ortega. Later, though, and Jose Aldo doesn't fight often, so it would be good on time. And if not that, if Volkanovski beats Chad Mendes, that would be a good fight. Other than that, there really isn't much else. I mean, you could probably do the Zabit fight if you want to build up Zabit quickly. I think it should be Jose Aldo, or if Volkanovski wins his fight. You could probably do Josh Emmett as well. That'd be a pretty good one, but that's lower in the rankings if only Ortega would take that fight. As for Max Holloway, I mean, he's cleared out a lot of these guys. If Chad Mendes beats Volkanovski, that could be in consideration, but I know Moicano's right there. I think Moicano will get the title shot, but Chad Mendes is such a compelling fight. I mean, it's a hard fight stylistically for Max Holloway. More so than Moicano, I believe. I think Max Holloway can do what Moicano does, but better than him. It'd be a pretty fun fight, but just that Chad Mendes fight is just so compelling. I don't think any of these guys are going to beat Max Holloway, to be honest. I don't think Edgar's going to beat him. I don't think that's a good fight for Edgar, stylistically. Chad Mendes can pull some problems. Moicano is not good stylistically. If Cub Swanson wins, I don't think that's good stylistically as well. Zabit is the future fight that's brewing. Yes, he hasn't proven himself against a top contender, but of what he has shown, the skills he has, the size that he is, in the future, if he keeps that rolling and he doesn't lose and he just puts on good performances even against the best guys, that is like the brewing fight that people are looking for in the future. Holloway versus Zabit. I don't know if Holloway's going to move up to 155 by the time that happens, though. But there are fights at 155 for Holloway as well if there is nothing showing up at 145. I mean, how fun would be Holloway versus Ferguson or something? That won't happen. Tony Ferguson's only going to be fighting the champion, but that's a fight that should happen someday in the future. Then we go to that co-main event. Valentina Shevchenko beats Joanna Jędrzejczyk by decision. 49-46 on all judges' scorecards. I actually predicted this fight exactly how it went down and with the scorecards. Valentina pretty much dominated the fight for the most part. Joanna had a hard time trying to get in distance. She had a hard time closing it in and knowing when to come in because of Valentina's always ready counter shots, pulling on punches and then countering with the right hand. And if that doesn't work, left hand down the center, covers a little bit more distance, throws the right hand and then gets back into stance. She has spinning attacks as well. The clinch work and the infighting is where this fight just got completely one-sided. I mean, very similar to the Muay Thai fights. Whenever it got in close, whenever it got in the clinch, Shevchenko dominated. Threw her to the ground at will. I mean, who has taken Joanna down as easily as Shevchenko has? And Shevchenko isn't even... I mean, yes, she's a judo black belt, and she is extremely experienced at Muay Thai, so she has the trips and the clinch, and very strong there. But facing fighters like Claudia and Jessica Andrade, these powerhouses who shoot double legs and are good at wrestling, very strong in the clinch as well. They couldn't take her down like that. And on the ground, Shevchenko just controlled the positions for the most part, landing some elbows here and there. And on the feet, the kicking game went to Shevchenko. I thought it would be a little bit even there, but her kicks were so much faster than Joanna's. I mean, it was just a complete dominance. In my opinion, she is the best pound for pound female fighter in the world when you go by skills. That's what it actually means, pound for pound. If everybody was in the same weight class, same size, who would pretty much be at the top? I think it would be Shevchenko. Yes, we saw her fight Amanda Nunes and they were very close fights, but Nunes is way bigger than Shevchenko. And it showed her reach, her height, her strength in the clinch as well. It just trumped over the naturally smaller Shevchenko. And I just don't see anybody beating her. People can come up from 115 and they will not beat her, I believe. We're probably going to be seeing a long reigning champion for years to come here. And who these should be fighting next? Joanna, I don't know if she's going to stay at 125. I would like for her to stay at 125 because 115 is pretty hard for her to make. But if she goes back to 115, I think Tatiana Suarez is the fight to make, maybe. I mean, Suarez is probably asking for a fight now because she fought a little bit ago. If not that, maybe Michelle Waterson. I mean, you can't give her anybody else. She beat Jessica Andrade. She beat Claudia twice. She beat Carolina. She beat Tecia Torres in her last fight before this one. She beat Carla Esparza. Who else? Michelle Waterson she never faced, so why not, I guess. And if not that, Tatiana Suarez can fight Joanna. If she beats Joanna, now you got your next contender for the belt. As for Valentina Shevchenko, it just doesn't matter. Does it? Doesn't matter. The division isn't even fully formed, so it could be anybody. But I guess you would have to say it's Nico Montano, but if they're going to do that, they're going to have a replacement ready. So maybe Jessica Ai or something who beat Caitlin Chookagian. Then we go to Gunnar Nelson beating Alex Oliveira by submission in the second round. What do you have to say about this one? A classic Nelson performance, except he usually stuns opponents before he takes them to the ground. This one, he went for the takedown. Early on, he went for it quick. I mean, he threw a lunging, blitzing left hand and then shot it for the takedown. Oliveira looked strong. I mean, he was definitely bigger than Nelson. And Nelson was able to get it to the ground, got his back, sunk in the figure four. But Oliveira was able to grab the right arm, turn it over his head, and turn inside the figure four on top of Nelson and got into the guard where he was landing some shots. And then in the second round, Oliveira actually pushed it up to the cage after clinching up with Nelson. Nelson, I think, forced the clinch. Nelson was eventually able to get it to the ground. He sliced through with the knee on belly, got into full mount easily because of that. The defense of Oliveira wasn't really there after the first initial transition from Nelson. And it just made everything easier. Nelson landed a huge elbow which cut Oliveira and sunk in the rear naked choke after that. Solid performance by Gunnar Nelson. He needed a win like this over a credible opponent, a very dangerous opponent in Alex Oliveira after coming off that knockout loss to Santiago Ponzinibbio. And after being the number 13 ranked, and he's number 14, I believe he should be fighting someone like Neil Magny. I think it's a solid fight for him. Nothing crazy up in the rankings, just to get a little bit higher, climb the ladder a little bit more, and it favors him stylistically. So that's a smart move for him and his camp, as well as the organization, to be honest. A hard fight would be someone like Leon Edwards. That'd be a tough fight. So I think Neil Magny is the next fight. And then for Alex Oliveira, I guess Dos Santos. Zaleski Dos Santos is a very fun fight with Alex Oliveira. Two knockout artists who love to exchange on the feet. Very exciting fight, I would say. Then we go to Jimmy Manuel versus Thiago Santos, where Santos wins the fight by second round due to knockout. I mean, this is a vicious knockout. This fight kind of lived up to the hype. I mean, this fight was all over the place. Started quickly, where Santos dropped Manuel with a winging right overhand, as Manuel was coming in with a left hook, it seemed like. And Santos from there just swarmed Manuel and just became chaos. You saw a tornado kick from Santos at one point, fell on his face, went for a triangle there. Jimmy Manuel was able to stun Santos, threw an elbow over the top, then a left shovel hook, which really rocked him. And then that knockout was just brutal. They both just swinging wildly, hooks at each other, haymakers, and Santos was able to move away and throw an uppercut after Manuel extended himself with a left hook, I believe it was, then ended it with a left hook afterward. I mean, just chaos and super exciting fight. I don't know if you would say this is the fight of the night or the Holloway versus Ortega's fight of the night. So good win by Thiago Santos. Now the light heavyweight division really needs someone like Santos there. Manuel's a little bit older, he's 38 years old. So this is actually better for the organization as well as the division. And I believe he's going to be a top 10 fighter after that, because Manuel is number 7, was number 7. And a fight for him, I would love to see him fight Nikita Krylov. That would be an excellent fight, but you'll be killing off one of the younger guys in the division. If not him, maybe the loser of Ilir Latifi versus Corey Anderson makes a lot of sense. So actually, that's the one I would make. The loser of Latifi versus Anderson versus Thiago Santos. And for Jimmy Manuwa, I believe him versus Patrick Cummins would be pretty good. I mean, this is Manuwa's 3rd loss in a row, I believe. And Cummins is a pretty interesting matchup with a wrestler versus a kickboxer here. That's the one I'd probably make. And to be honest, I missed the entire prelims. I'm going to have to catch up on that later. So pretty good night of fights, at least the ones I saw. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content, make sure to subscribe. I will be making a breakdown of one of the fights by tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. And then my podcast is going to come out most likely on Monday, maybe even Tuesday morning. So be on the lookout for that as well. And again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.